For back-to-back weeks, the Gophers take down LA schools. The Gophers like the bright lights.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Gopher fans? You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we're breaking down the big win against UCLA as the Gophers head into the bye week. What were the biggest takeaways? What were the things we loved to see? And then what do we start to turn the page on? The season is just past halfway done for the Gophers, but what is on the horizon? What is yet to come? How do the next few games look like for the Gophers? And what are things to keep in mind with each of those matchups? And then finally, we're going to talk about where individual Gophers stand within the conference when it comes to production. So if you want to know how these Gophers players are stacking up against the rest of the competition, maybe who could find their name into some all Big Ten teams, we're diving into all of that today. So be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube, give a follow wherever you get your podcasts at Locked On Golden Gophers, leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast so others can find the podcast as well. But I appreciate y'all for tapping in. I appreciate the everydayers who are coming back to this channel each and every day to talk about your Golden Gophers. So let's talk about that UCLA win. Because back-to-back weeks now, the Gophers beat LA schools. It seems like they're trying to get revenge for Minnesota losing their NBA team to the Lakers. And they said, look, y'all want to come to the Big Ten? It's cool, but you're going to lose to Minnesota. So you love to see it happen. Now, when you're looking at this UCLA game in specific, the UCLA defense went all out to try and stop Darius Taylor. And for a majority of the game, they really slowed him up. They were trying to take him out of the game in both rushing and passing aspects. And with a top 25 defense at the time heading into this matchup versus the run, they showed why that was legitimate. Darius Taylor had 15 attempts, 30 yards rushing, and a touchdown. Now, in the pass game, they aim to take him out of that as well by sending more blitzers or sending a blitzer to make Darius Taylor step up and add an additional pass blocking assignment to try and stop said blitzer and give Max Brosmer time. They did that time and time again, to the fact that Darius Taylor only got 3 catches in this game, which is definitely a low over the last 3 to 4 weeks. But the third one was the game-clinching winning touchdown where he kind of walked easily into the end zone. It capped off a huge game for the Gophers in that fourth quarter comeback, in back-to-back fourth quarter comeback. So overall, the Gophers get it done. They beat the UCLA Bruins to improve to 4-3 as they head into the bye week. Now, Max Brosmer remained efficient. He remained composed. He put up another fourth quarter comeback win. In fact, he could have 4 on the season if it weren't for a missed field goal or an onside kick call that just ended up not going in the Gophers' favor, debatable or not. Regardless, we're talking about a quarterback who could have been in the case for 4 comeback wins on the season against power conference schools. That just goes to show you how killer mentality Max Brosmer has, but also how composed he is in that pocket and leading this Gophers offense. Now, he was 70% completion in this game on 37 attempts, so that's great efficiency once again. 193 passing yards with 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and his second half was where he was a money. He was top notch. He was 16 for 21 in that second half. That's about 77% completion. He had 135 of his 193 yards in that second half, and he had both of his touchdowns in that second half. Plus, he was 100% on third downs in the second half, going 6 for 6. And on top of that, in the final drive for the Gophers, going down to take that lead in that money clutch fourth quarter drive, he was 5 for 7 on that final drive, going 52 yards and a touchdown to cap off the game. But it's not just this UCLA game where he has been clutch. In fact, he has been playing at an elite level in these past 3 games. He is 68 of 96 over the past 3 games. That's 70.8%. So nearly 71% completion. He's had 207 passing yards per game in those 3 games. And he has 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns among those 3 games. So 6 total touchdowns, about 2 touchdowns a game for the offense coming from Max Brosmer. He also has a passer rating of 133.33, which is an elite clip for any quarterback. And on top of that, he has 2 game-winning touchdown drives in the fourth quarter. And again, arguably could have had a shot at 3. So overall, Max Brosmer is everything that the Gophers had wanted and then some. And he's just getting warmed up. He's just getting started. He's just getting comfortable. So hopefully this back half of the season only continues to get better for Brosmer and his Gophers legacy in the 1 year he has with the Golden Gophers. Now you move to his pass catching weapons and you look at Daniel Jackson. He showed out with 10, should have been 11 catches in this game. The one that they called an incomplete catch when he got his toes inside the boundary and went down, and the stanchion or whatever, the yard marker, dropped down on top of him. The ball did not move, but alas, they didn't want to give him the catch. Even Mike Pereira on the review was like, yo, I think that's a catch. So Daniel Jackson should have had 11 catches, still had 10 catches, which is his career high right now. And if he can keep this up, if the Gophers can keep this up and the offensive line can help the run game, this Gophers offense can still improve. There's a lot of room for improvement in this Gophers offense, which you will hear more about when we get into the actual statistics of how things are looking comparatively across the Big Ten. But overall, the offense, they got it done and they got the dub. Defensively, the Gophers had one of their best games, but this on the rushing side of things, I should say. And this game was their worst rushing competition, but they still showed that, look, it might not be a good rushing team, but we're going to prove that we can stop that not good rushing team and make sure that we improve in this area. So overall, they held UCLA to 36 yards rushing. Devin Easton was a monster in this game, both in stopping the run, both in creating pressure on the quarterback, and with a deflection that turned into the Gophers' first interception. It really sparked this team. Devin Easton was all over the field for the Gophers, and they absolutely loved his presence and his confidence. And now he can go into this bye week and get fully healthy and continue to dominate in the Big Ten. Now, the defense also started by giving up 3 for 3 on third down attempts in UCLA's first drive, and all of a sudden they're scoring a touchdown right away. Things are looking kind of brutal, but they held UCLA to 3 for 10 on their final 10 attempts on third down. So they adjusted and they fixed that throughout the game, which has been a weaker part of the Gophers' defensive efforts. They got it together in those final 10 attempts on third down. And there were really only 2 successful offensive drives for the UCLA Bruins, one in each half. So overall, the Gophers adjusted, they reconfigured, and they got it done in this game. The defense forced 3 interceptions, should have been 4, but Cody Lindenberg couldn't come up with the diving grab after getting the ball deflected up into the air. They had 3 sacks in this game, 5 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble, but UCLA did recover that fumble. But overall, this defense has been coming to play no matter who the Gophers are taking on, whether it be a ranked team, whether it be a team that's at the bottom of the conference. They are going to show up and show out, and that's what they've been putting on the film. So overall, if you're currently looking at the defensive numbers, the Gophers are 4th in the country in pass defense, 47th in the country in rush defense, which is probably better than most people would imagine, 14th in the country in scoring defense, 7th in the country in total defense, 2nd in the entire country in turnovers gained, and then tied for 77th in sacks. So the defense is one of the best in the country, a top 10 in most of the major statistical categories now over halfway through the season. And if Minnesota can continue that, they should be able to stay in the fight in these final stretch of games down the back half. Now, key moments in this UCLA versus Gophers game that I have to just shout out and give a mention to. You're talking about Coy Parrish got a massive clocking, a massive lick put on him in the punt return game in the early portions of this game. And then the UCLA defender got up and started chirping, started talking, started jabbering in Coy Parrish's face. Coy was not having it. He was getting back at it. His teammates pulled him away. But I said from that point, I tweeted immediately after that moment, and I said, look, that player just fired Coy Parrish up. I guarantee Coy Parrish has a major moment in this game because of that, because he'll be fired up, because he has that confidence, because he has that mentality of, look, you think you just punked me? I'll have the last laugh sort of mentality. And he did have the last laugh, not once, but twice, having a diving interception, which changed the momentum and helped the Gophers get back into the game and take the lead, I believe, coming off of that interception. And then a game sealing interception for the second game in a row, back to back. Coy Parrish lights it up and shows, look, you shouldn't poke the bear. You shouldn't chirp at the dog. And Coy Parrish is just a true freshman getting started. Now, like I said, Devin Eastern was balling in this one. In fact, he had the first pass deflection that turned it into a Cody Lindenberg interception in this game, and he was all over the place. But that moment is what really fired this defense up and really helped them string along a closeout in the first half, but then later on goes to be a stalwart in the second half after one drive as well. So the last two things I want to talk about in this game, the decision to punt with 3 minutes remaining. Now, I tweeted and I was like, I do not like this call. It's risky, especially with what UCLA's offense just did the drive prior, where it was one of their longer drives and they did get a score. But look, PJ Fleck showed he gets paid the big bucks for a reason. He trusts his defense. They get the ball to UCLA. They get a perfect pin punt down on like the 2-yard line. And all of a sudden the Gophers timely use their timeouts ahead of the 2-minute warning, get a stop, and get the ball back, and ultimately get the final drive to go and take the lead. So props to PJ Fleck for his clock management. Props to PJ Fleck for trusting in his defense, and they got it done. The final thing I want to call out is the 3rd and 2 before the Gophers got into the goal line territory. And it was the fake stretch run to Darius Taylor where UCLA bit so hard, Max Brosler spins around, turns, and there's a wide receiver screen to Lemeki Brockington on 3rd and 2 to get a massive first down, put the Gophers in 1st and goal, and ultimately put them in the position to get the game-winning touchdown. Major moments in that game I was super excited for. The Gophers are headed to a well-timed bye week, but what does the next part of this season look like for Minnesota? We're going to dive into all of that coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find the quality professionals that are right for the role that you have open. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn Jobs, I want to stress this, it's not just a job board. It's definitely where I go when I'm looking for anything that is of interest, maybe a side job or the potential opportunities that are out there, or even if I'm just connecting with others in a professional networking space. And that's why it's not just a job board, because LinkedIn helps you find professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to a perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit any other job board sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you are looking in the wrong place. And LinkedIn is very they're very in tune is the word I'm looking for. Let me correct myself right there, because I got to tell you the truth. LinkedIn is in tune, knowing their small businesses are wearing so many hats and they might not have the time to or the resources to hire, but LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions to make it quicker and easier for your team. It's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post about your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post about your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about the season outlook as we get to the backstretch after the bye week. Now, the Gophers need this bye week, get some guys right, get them guys healthy. You had Jalen Logan Redding, who was questionable heading into this game. You had Devin Eastern, who was dinged up and questionable heading into this game. Justin Wally came back from an injury. You got Kerry Brown, who's trying to get out of the concussion protocol. This bye week is well timed for the Gophers to get people fully healthy and get them ready to close out the season. Now, when you look at this season, when you look at the rest of the games the Gophers have on the schedule, can they get bowl eligible? Can they go further than that? That's the big question. And the first things first, you take on Maryland at home in a homecoming game. And to me, this is a must-win game. It's another game that Minnesota will be favored in, and you have to take care of the ones that you're supposed to win, plain and simple. We've talked about that time and time again here at Locked On Golden Gophers, and this is a pass-heavy team, so that plays into your defense's strength, being the best category that you are in the nation across the defense. 4th in passing defense. You've been number 1 for the past 2 weeks before that. So top 5 for 3 straight weeks in your passing defensive category. And this is a team that loves to pass the ball, so it should play to your favor. They also just got shellacked by Northwestern, and homecoming games scare me as of late, but we did have a win in our last one, so that's promising. Now, homecoming games under PJ Fleck, you got a win against Illinois in 2017, a loss versus Iowa in 2018, a win against Illinois in 2019. 2020, we didn't have an official homecoming game because of COVID and it got canceled. 2021, lost to Bowling Green. 2022, lost to Purdue. In 2023, we got back on track with a win over Louisiana. So hopefully the Gophers can continue that positive trend on homecoming, get another back-to-back win against this Maryland team that should be beatable. You move on to the next game on that schedule, and it's Illinois on the road, and you haven't beat Brett Bielema yet. PJ Fleck hasn't got that part done, so we need to check that box. We hate hearing the Kirk Ferentz record, and we hate hearing the Brett Bielema record. Well, it's time to get a dub in that Brett Bielema record and get the monkey off your back. Overall, Illinois is still currently ranked, I believe, so they nearly choked to Purdue. They were up big, and all of a sudden Purdue storms back. It's like a 52-49 final, but that shows that Illinois can be had. They can be caught playing sloppy. And this feels like the year that Minnesota has the least expectations to win against Illinois. So maybe that means that this is the year that they finally win it against Illinois. That'll be a big one. The next one is my biggest game of the backstretch, in my opinion. That's at Rutgers. You've heard me talk about this game time and time again. You've heard me talk about the drama that comes with it, the people that have switched from programs to programs, and basically the Rutgers being the Gophers East, and it's going to come to it. I mean, you got your old quarterback here, your old safety there, your old offense coordinator, your old defensive coordinator. Rutgers, they've got a lot of former Gophers. And on top of that, the Gophers have played Rutgers twice with Coach PJ Fleck, and they've won big in both of those games, if I do recall. And the last one, Mo Ibrahim absolutely killed them the last time we played. Then you look at Rutgers' last game where they got absolutely dominated by Wisconsin all over the ground, and it makes you think maybe Darius Taylor could absolutely ball out in that one. But can our defense give their quarterback, Ethan Kaliakmanis, problems? Now, Nebraska gave him problems. Wisconsin gave him problems at times. I think Minnesota can add to that trend, and I think it's going to be a major game for the Gophers, and hopefully within those first 3 games of this back half of the schedule, we can get ourselves bowl eligible, and that'll be critical because after that Rutgers game, you have another bye week, and it's a well-timed bye week once again because the final 2 games are going to be big ones. They're going to be critical, and they're going to be tough because those final 2 games are versus Penn State and then on the road at Wisconsin. So in that Penn State game, that's your most difficult game on the schedule by far. The defense is rock solid. They have 2 gnarly running backs. They have a very talented quarterback who can turn the ball over, but he's still really talented. And they might have the best tight end in the conference, in my opinion, who absolutely just dominated USC this last week. Now, they nearly lost to USC, but they stormed back, won it in overtime. But that USC game shows you if the Gophers put together 4 quarters and it's at home and the crowd gets into it, the Gophers could be in that game. And that is something I would not have guessed at the beginning of the season. So if Minnesota can put it all together, that could be a very fun one, maybe one where you can try and pull another upset and put some more respect on your resume and your name. And then finally, you got to win the Axe back. You're going on the road at Wisconsin. Now, PJ Fleck has won 2 of the last 3 when he has gone to Wisconsin, but I'm not really sure what this Wisconsin team is. They had a slow start to the year. Their quarterback 1 got hurt. Their quarterback 2 feels like a roller coaster of really good and then really bad at times. Their running back 1 left the program. Their running back 2 has stepped up. Tawi Walker transferred from OU, and he has had his first shot at being the guy and looking really, really good at it. So overall, in the last 2 weeks, they put up like 92 points in their last 2 games. So this Wisconsin team is finding something that is clicking, and they are dominating. They dominated Purdue. They dominated Rutgers. So Minnesota's going to have to get their poop in a group if they want to find a way to win this game. And the biggest thing is you have to find a way to stop the run because that's where they've been dominating, and that's what has been Minnesota's weakness in this season on defense. So Minnesota has multiple games games to figure out the run defense, but if they can't get it figured out by this Wisconsin game, we could be holding our breaths. But this back half of the season, anything could happen in any one of those games. And that's what makes it scary. That's what makes it dramatic. That's what makes it fun. That's why we play the games on Saturdays. So the Gophers are heading into the bye week, but where do the Gophers currently stand in the Big Ten individually? We're going to talk about that. Maybe who could end up on Big Ten teams. That's how we're going to close out today's show here at Locked On Golden Gophers. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Gametime, because Gametime is making it easier for you to find the best deals out there, and they're curating it for you to make it easier to find the best prices on great seats. So right now they have the Gametime picks, and it customizes and curates and makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, and all of that and more. On top of that, they have the all-in pricing, which you have to toggle. I can't stress it enough. You have to toggle this feature, but it might be my favorite feature on the app because it shows you the total up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. And on top of that, they've got their panoramic seat views, so you can see what you will be getting the view of before you even buy the tickets, and they have the lowest price guarantee. So if you find these same tickets elsewhere on other sites and it's at a lower price, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference with their lowest price guarantee, and they have the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. I can go on and on about why I love Gametime, but it's time for you to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, download the Gametime app and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, Gophers fans, we're wrapping up today talking about where the Gophers are individually when it comes to the leaders across the Big Ten. So we're starting with the quarterbacks. Max Brosmer has been balling out, but how does he compare against the rest of the Big Ten quarterbacks? Well, he is in the top half in almost every major category. He is 8th in the conference in passing yards with 1,456. He's 10th in the conference in passing touchdowns with 8. He is 7th in the conference in completion percentage with 68.1, but the way he's been trending, that will be in the 70s before we know it. On top of that, he is tied for 4th in the conference for interceptions with only 4. Now, Altmaier leads the conference with only 1, and then Curtis Rourke, Will Rogers, and Jake Lausch have only 2. But 2 of Max Brosmer's interceptions were absolutely freakish plays, one by an Iowa defender, which was a great defense play, and the other one with the toe-tapping weird interception by Michigan on the sideline. So overall, I'm not concerned about the interceptions whatsoever. But overall, the Gophers are 13th in the conference when it comes to pass yards and pass yards per game, or passing offense, ahead of Purdue, ahead of Northwestern, ahead of Rutgers, ahead of Iowa, and ahead of Michigan. So the offense itself isn't passing the ball as much as the rest of the conference, but Max Brosmer's numbers are up there with the top half easily. Now you go to the running backs. Again, another thing where Darius Taylor is in a lot of those top half statistics across the conference, but the Gophers, which shocked me, are 17th in the entire conference of 18 teams in rush offense. They're the second lowest rush offense in the entire conference, which is something we are absolutely not used to as Gophers fans. The only team worse is the team we just beat in UCLA. But when you look at Darius Taylor, he's 11th in the conference in rush yards with 432, and he's 11th in the conference in rush yards per game. He is 7th in the conference in all-purpose yards with 655. He is 1st in the conference for running backs and receiving yards with 223. He's 36th amongst all players in the conference in receiving yards. So that's wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. Darius Taylor is 36th in receiving yards. He's 11th in the conference among all players, again, wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs in receptions. And then he is tied for 5th in the conference for rushing touchdowns with 6 touchdowns. So he has been dynamic. He has been elite, and he has still not been able to get the best help from his offensive line. So those numbers can increase even more if the offensive line can find the push that we are used to them seeing and creating over the past years. Also, shout out to Marcus Major, who is 25th in the conference in rush yards with 223. Then you go over to the wide receivers. Daniel Jackson, 10th in the conference in receiving yards, 9th among only wide receivers. And everyone from 2 to 9 that's ahead of him is within 100 yards. So he could still find himself into the top 5, top 3 even in receiving yards if he can continue to have big games as we go down this back stretch of the season. Now, he also is 4th in the entire conference in receptions. So those numbers, I imagine, will continue to stay up there, although his touchdown numbers have dwindled this season because the Gophers have been all over the place spreading the touchdowns out amongst their players. So Daniel Jackson is still putting up some elite numbers, could find himself in the conversation of a Big Ten player, a Big Ten team player. And then you've got Elijah Spencer, shout out to him, 29th in the conference in receiving yards among all pass catchers and 25th among only wide receivers. Then finally, we're going to kick it over to the defense. So individually, defensive players that have stood out. Cody Lindenberg is 7th in the conference in tackles. And Maverick Baranowski, get this, he is tied for 14th in the conference in tackles, and he's missed the last 2 games. He was the leading tackler 2 games ago. So if Maverick didn't miss those 2 games, he could find himself in the top 10 as well, and he still has a chance if he can get healthy after the bye week. So Maverick and Cody are being very productive in the tackling front, and that's with Cody Lindenberg having a lot of missed tackles on the season. So those numbers could be even more elite if he can clean up the missed tackles as we go down the stretch. Then you go to interceptions, and your boy, true freshman Coy Parrish, is 1st in the entire conference in interceptions with 4. By himself, he leads the entire Big Ten conference, and he just started getting opportunities to really play on the defense. So he could really make claim of that if he can continue down the stretch. Now, Ethan Robinson and Kerry Brown are both tied for 3rd with others with 2 interceptions each, so they're both doing well as well. And then Ja Joyner is tied with Mason Graham for 4th in the conference in sacks with 3.5. There are 5 players tied for 1st, and that first number is with 5 sacks. So he is not too far off from the leaders if he can have a major sack game. Now, finally, forced fumbles, individuals, leaders right now in the conference, there's 2 forced fumbles. There are 10 players with 2 forced fumbles. The Gophers don't have any of those 10, but they do have 5 players who have 1 forced fumble, so they're right there in the conversation. But when you look at the totality of how the Gophers defense stacks up in the conference, Minnesota is 2nd in the conference in pass defense, only behind Washington right now. Minnesota is 3rd in the conference in total defense, only behind Ohio State and Indiana. Minnesota is 5th in the conference in scoring defense, behind Ohio State, Nebraska, Penn State, and Indiana. And they are 1st in the conference in turnovers gained, and then they are 11th in the conference in run defense. So they're still almost in the top half in every single category besides run defense, where they're just outside of the top half. This Gophers defense has been elite. Their players have been stacking up, and overall, the only thing that absolutely shocked me is how low they are in rushing. Now, I know that we haven't had amazing rushing stats this season, but seeing Darius Taylor as the 11th best running back in rushing yards, but the Gophers being 17th overall out of 18 teams is just wild. Hopefully, they can find the run game in this back half. Those numbers can go up. The offensive production can go up, and the Gophers can keep winning games. But that's going to do it for us here at Locked On Golden Gophers. I appreciate you listening. Please be sure to hit subscribe, tell others about the show, leave comments over on YouTube, but I will see you next time, where we'll talk a little bit more about what's to come in the back half of the season. We'll talk later this week with Tristyn as well, but enjoy the bye week. I'll see you tomorrow. Row the boat, Sky Mago Gophers, as always, and please don't forget to hit subscribe.